It's not that men stopped loving women, it's that they stopped feeling loved by them. Somewhere along the way, something shifted. Relationships used to be about connection, understanding, and teamwork. But now they feel like competition. Men aren't walking away because they hate love. They're walking away because they're tired of fighting for it. They're tired of giving everything just to feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. And if we're being honest, a lot of men didn't plan to stay single. They were pushed there by disappointment. Think about it. When every effort is questioned, every emotion is mocked, and every vulnerability is treated like weakness, what reason does a man have to open up again? He learns to build walls instead of bridges. He learns silence instead of trust. And soon peace feels safer than love ever did. It's not that men don't want connection. They crave it deeply. But they've realized that chasing it often leads to pain. The modern dating world tells men they're the problem. That they need to earn affection, prove their worth, or be good enough. But how long can someone keep proving themselves before they give up completely? This is the part no one talks about. The quiet exhaustion behind so many men's decision to stay single. So maybe the question isn't, why are men avoiding relationships? Maybe it's, what happened that made love feel like a burden instead of a blessing? Because the truth is, men haven't changed as much as the world around them has. And if you listen closely, their silence isn't pride, it's pain. And behind that silence is a story that deserves to be heard. The silent crisis. Men aren't dating like they used to. More and more men are stepping away from the dating scene. Not because they've given up, but because they've grown tired. This isn't about bitterness or fear of rejection. It's about realizing that peace is better than pretending. Scroll through any dating app and you'll see it. Endless profiles, filters, highlight reels, and people chasing attention instead of connection. It's not that men don't want love anymore. They just don't see where it exists in a world built on performance. Modern dating feels like a game most men don't want to play. You match, you text, you vibe. And then suddenly it's over, ghosted, replaced, forgotten. For many men, it's become emotionally draining. They invest their time, energy, and effort only to feel like they're auditioning for someone's temporary interest. What used to be about building a bond has turned into a constant chase for validation. And a lot of men are choosing to step out of that cycle completely. They've learned that being single doesn't mean being lonely. It means being free from constant judgment, from competing with unrealistic expectations, and from always wondering if their effort is enough. Men used to date to find love. Now they're protecting their sanity. Because when dating starts to feel like a battlefield, walking away becomes the only form of peace. And it's not just about relationships, it's about self-worth. Men are realizing that being single gives them space to grow, to focus, to heal. No more walking on eggshells. No more trying to impress someone who only sees flaws. Just time to rebuild themselves. This silent crisis isn't about men running from love. It's about men refusing to beg for it. They're not cold. They're just done being misunderstood. The modern shift, how dating has changed dating today, isn't what it used to be. What once started with genuine curiosity and emotional connection has turned into a marketplace. A swipe, a like, a scroll. Everything feels transactional now. People aren't getting to know each other anymore. They're comparing options. Social media has turned relationships into status symbols and love into a competition for validation. Everyone wants to be seen, but no one wants to truly see. It's not about finding someone who fits your soul anymore. It's about finding someone who fits your image. The person who looks good in pictures, who checks the boxes, who boosts your ego, and in that race for perfection, authenticity has quietly disappeared. Men feel it deeply. They're judged not by their character, but by their lifestyle. If they don't have the car, the body, the social following, or the money, they're invisible. And when everything becomes about what you can offer instead of who you are, love loses its meaning. Even the conversations have changed. Instead of, what are your dreams? It's, what do you do? Instead of, how do you feel? It's, where do you hang out? People talk, but they don't connect. They share moments, but not meaning. And somewhere in between likes and followers, the warmth of human connection got lost. Many men have realized that dating now feels more like performing. You're constantly proving your worth to someone scrolling through hundreds of options. One wrong text, one dull response, and you're replaced in seconds. That's not romance, that's exhaustion. And that's why so many men are opting out. They're not anti-love. They're anti-illusion. They don't want to compete with filters, highlight reels, or fantasies that no real human can live up to. They want something real, but real has become rare. And when something as sacred as love becomes another form of content, it's no wonder men have stopped playing the game. The unrealistic expectations, the perfect man myth somewhere along the line, the idea of a good man turned into the fantasy of a perfect man. Now, he's expected to have it all. The looks, the lifestyle, the money, the charm, the emotional depth, and the patience to handle everyone else's chaos. And if he falls short in even one area, he's instantly labeled as not enough. That's the reality men are facing today. A never-ending audition for approval, not affection. Men aren't being chosen for who they are. They're being measured by what they can provide. If he's ambitious but quiet, he's boring. If he's kind but doesn't make six figures, he's not ready. If he's confident, he's cocky. If he's vulnerable, he's weak. There's no winning because the modern dating standard isn't about compatibility anymore. It's about perfection, and that perfection doesn't exist. Social media only adds fuel to the fire. Every swipe, every scroll shows men that they're being compared to someone richer, taller, funnier, or more polished. It's like a constant silent competition for worthiness. The message is loud and clear. Who you are isn't enough unless you fit the fantasy. And after a while, men start to internalize it. They stop trying to impress, not out of laziness, but because they're tired of performing. Imagine living in a world where love feels like a job interview, where you're constantly proving your value but never feeling valued. That's the exhaustion many men carry silently. They still want to love deeply, but not under the pressure of being perfect. They crave appreciation, not evaluation. And that's where the disconnect begins. Because when every flaw is magnified and every effort overlooked, men stop showing up with their hearts. They shut down. They pull back. Not because they've stopped caring, but because they're tired of being treated like projects instead of partners. The truth is, no man can be perfect, and the ones trying the hardest are usually the ones breaking the most inside. The emotional disconnection, when effort isn't enough, it's one of the quietest heartbreaks men experience. Giving their best, only to be told they're too nice, too available, or not exciting enough. The men who care deeply, who text back fast, who listen, who show consistency, somehow those qualities have become unappreciated. In a world addicted to chaos, peace is mistaken for boredom. And that's where the emotional disconnection begins. Many men have learned the hard way that effort doesn't guarantee appreciation. They put in time, attention, and genuine energy, but instead of being seen as valuable, they're seen as predictable. It's almost like kindness lost its value. When drama is more stimulating than loyalty, and mind games are more exciting than emotional safety, good men get pushed aside. Not because they lack passion, but because they don't create tension. This constant rejection creates something deeper than sadness. It creates emotional burnout. Men stop trying not because they don't want to love, but because love no longer feels safe. Every time they open up, they risk being dismissed or overlooked. Every time they invest emotionally, it feels like they're setting themselves up to lose. And over time, the message becomes clear. Your best isn't enough. So they retreat. They stop texting first. They stop sharing how they feel. They stop giving the effort that once came naturally. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Because how long can someone keep showing up when their effort keeps going unnoticed? How long can a man keep being genuine when the world rewards games instead of honesty? That's why so many men today seem detached, not heartless but drained. They've given love to the wrong people for too long and have nothing left to give. They've realized that no amount of effort can make someone value what they've already decided to take for granted. And that realization, more than heartbreak, is what makes men choose distance over disappointment. The rise of protecting peace. Why men are choosing solitude. There comes a point when peace starts to feel better than passion. When silence feels safer than arguments, and solitude feels lighter than constant disappointment. That's where a lot of men have arrived today. They've learned that being single isn't a sign of weakness. It's a form of self-protection. After years of emotional confusion, mixed signals, and one-sided effort, men have realized that peace is priceless. For many, solitude has become the new strength. It's not about giving up on love, it's about refusing to lose themselves in the process of finding it. They've stopped chasing people who only bring chaos, stopped trying to fix relationships that drain their energy, and stopped begging for attention that should have been freely given. Because once a man tastes peace, the kind that comes from emotional stability and mental clarity, he doesn't want to trade it for temporary excitement ever again. Peace doesn't argue, it doesn't manipulate, it doesn't play games. It allows men to breathe, to think, to grow. And in that stillness, they start to remember who they are. They get their focus back, their drive, their purpose. The same energy they used to pour into chasing love now goes into building themselves. That's why so many men aren't rushing back into relationships. Not because they hate women, but because they love themselves enough to walk away from what disturbs their peace. It's not loneliness when your heart feels calm. It's not isolation when your soul finally rests. Men have discovered that solitude is where healing happens. It's where they stop proving and start becoming. And once they realize that peace doesn't demand perfection, only presence, they start to see that maybe being single isn't a loss at all. Maybe it's a reset. And for the first time in a long time, they're okay with that. The feminine energy flip, masculine men versus modern dynamics. There was a time when being a strong, protective, dependable man was admired, even desired. But now, those same traits are often labeled as controlling, outdated, or toxic. Somewhere along the way, the natural balance between masculine and feminine energy shifted, and with it came confusion, resentment, and emotional distance. Men who were raised to lead, provide, and protect now feel like they're being punished for doing exactly that. In today's world, masculinity is constantly under a microscope. If a man takes charge, he's called controlling. If he provides, he's told he's trying to buy love. If he stays quiet and patient, he's emotionally unavailable. It's like no matter what he does, it's never the right thing. This constant pushback has made many men question where they fit in modern relationships. They don't know if they're supposed to lead or step back, protect or stay silent, express or suppress, and that confusion slowly turns into withdrawal. The truth is, men still want to be masculine, not in a way that dominates, but in a way that complements. They want to protect, to guide, to be a source of strength. But when those instincts are rejected or ridiculed, they start to shut down. They stop offering their strength because it's no longer valued. They stop leading because leadership now feels like a threat, not a gift. And eventually, they stop trying altogether. The balance between masculine and feminine energy was never meant to be a battle. It was meant to be a partnership. But today, both sides are competing for control instead of harmony. And the cost of that competition is connection. Men aren't walking away because they want power. They're walking away because they're tired of being told their natural way of loving is somehow wrong. They're not afraid of strong women. They just don't want to lose themselves trying to prove they're still needed. The validation trap. Why men don't compete anymore? There was a time when a man's effort meant something, when showing up, being reliable, and loving with consistency made him stand out. But in today's world, effort doesn't shine the same way it used to. Because attention is everywhere and validation is cheap, men have realized that they're no longer competing for connection, they're competing for attention. And that's a game no one wins. Modern dating has turned into a constant performance. Women are flooded with likes, messages, and compliments daily. Social media has made validation so instant that genuine effort feels slow in comparison. A man can take her out, listen to her, support her dreams, but one quick notification from someone online can take that attention away in seconds. And that's when many men started to pull back. They saw that no matter what they did, it was never enough to compete with the endless stream of digital admiration. They're not competing with other men anymore. They're competing with influencers, filters, and fantasies that no real human can live up to. How can a man's presence compare to the curated perfection that's constantly flashing across her screen? It's not just about looks, it's about the illusion of endless options. That illusion has destroyed the value of effort. So men stop chasing validation that doesn't last. They stop trying to prove their worth to people who measure affection in attention spans. Because deep down, every man wants to feel chosen. Not for what he can offer, but for who he is when no one's watching. The truth is, validation doesn't equal connection. It feeds the ego, not the heart. And men are starting to see that chasing someone addicted to attention only leads to emptiness. They're not bitter. They're just done playing a game that doesn't reward sincerity. When everything becomes about who gets noticed first, the ones who move with depth start walking away. Because at some point, you stop chasing validation and start protecting your value. The accountability gap, why blame isn't shared. Whenever the topic of modern relationships comes up, the finger almost always points in one direction, toward men. Society loves to say that men don't step up anymore, that they're afraid of commitment, lazy, or emotionally unavailable. But rarely does anyone stop to ask the harder question. Why would men step up if they no longer feel it's appreciated or reciprocated? Accountability seems to have become a one-way street, and that's where the real problem lies. Men are constantly told to be better, to communicate more, earn more, show more emotion, take more initiative. But how often do we hear those same expectations placed on women? Somewhere along the line, equality turned into expect more from men, but question less from women. It's become socially acceptable to criticize men for their flaws, yet taboo to hold women accountable for theirs. And that imbalance quietly breeds resentment. A healthy relationship can only exist when both sides take responsibility for their actions, their attitudes, and their effort. But in today's world, men often feel like they're walking into partnerships where the pressure is one-sided. If things go wrong, it's his fault for not leading well enough, not understanding her feelings, not providing enough, not trying harder. But rarely does anyone ask what she contributed or failed to. And this isn't about blaming women, it's about balance. Love doesn't survive without honesty, and honesty means both sides must face their part in the dysfunction. Men aren't perfect, but neither are women. When one side is constantly expected to improve while the other gets to point fingers, respect dies. That's why so many men have stepped back. They're not avoiding accountability. They're rejecting hypocrisy. They want fairness, not favoritism. Because until both men and women are held to the same emotional standard, relationships will keep breaking under the same silent weight, unshared responsibility. The turning point: men are rebuilding themselves. Something powerful is happening quietly behind the scenes. While the world argues about dating standards and gender dynamics, men have stopped trying to win approval and started rebuilding themselves. This is the turning point. Instead of pouring their energy into relationships that drain them, they're investing that same energy into purpose, discipline, and peace. They've realized that the greatest comeback doesn't come from revenge or validation. It comes from growth. Men are hitting the gym, not to impress anyone, but to feel strong again. They're building businesses, stacking savings, and focusing on mental clarity. They're reading, reflecting, and learning what peace actually feels like. For the first time in a long time, they're choosing self-respect over external approval. Because when you've been dismissed, misunderstood, or taken for granted long enough, solitude starts to sound like freedom. They've learned that chasing love while neglecting yourself only leads to emptiness. So now they're chasing purpose instead. And something shifts when a man finds direction. He walks differently. He talks differently. He no longer begs to be seen. He commands respect through his presence. He becomes intentional about who he gives his time to, and he refuses to settle for anything that disturbs his balance. This era of men rebuilding themselves isn't about ego or resentment. It's about alignment. They're realizing that they can't control who loves them, but they can control how they show up for themselves. They're choosing structure over chaos, logic over impulse, and growth over games. And as they rise, they're finding something far more rewarding than validation, peace of mind. The truth is, men are not lost. They're evolving. They've stopped chasing temporary attention and started chasing long-term fulfillment. They're not avoiding love. They're preparing to give it from a stronger, wiser place. Because when a man rebuilds himself, he doesn't come back the same. He comes back unstoppable. The hard truth. Love still matters. But trust is broken for all the walls men build. For all the silence and distance. The truth is, they still want love. Deep down, they still crave that connection, that softness, that feeling of being understood without having to explain themselves. Love still matters to them, maybe even more than they'd like to admit. But after everything they've seen, after being judged, used, or dismissed, they've learned that love isn't enough if it costs their peace, pride, or purpose. Men aren't heartless, they're cautious. They've learned that opening up too quickly can lead to heartbreak, and trusting too easily can lead to regret. The pain isn't that they stopped believing in love. It's that they stopped believing it could exist without conditions. Too many have given everything to people who saw their effort as expected, not appreciated. Too many have been told to be real men, while being treated like they're disposable. And that kind of hurt doesn't just fade. It changes how you love. Now, men protect themselves differently. They value silence over arguments, distance over disappointment, solitude over stress. Not because they don't feel, but because they've felt too much. And when trust is broken enough times, even the purest heart becomes guarded. They start loving with caution, giving less, expecting less. Not because they want to, but because it's safer that way. Yet beneath that armor, the longing for real love still burns. The kind that's mutual. The kind that doesn't demand perfection. The kind that feels like peace, not pressure. Men aren't rejecting love. They're just refusing to settle for pain disguised as it. That's the hard truth. Men still believe in love, but only if it feels safe. Only if it respects their boundaries. Only if it grows with them, not against them. They're not asking for much, just honesty, loyalty, and peace. Because at the end of the day, love without trust is chaos, and men are finally choosing to walk away from chaos for good. So tell me, are men wrong for walking away, or are they finally waking up? Because what we're seeing today isn't a generation of men who've given up on love. It's a generation that's simply done being misunderstood. They're tired of fighting battles where they're always the villain, tired of explaining feelings that no one wants to hear, tired of trying to be everything and still being told it's not enough. Maybe men aren't the problem. Maybe they're just finally choosing peace over pain. This is the part that hits hardest. Men aren't walking away because they stopped caring. They're walking away because they've learned to care differently. They're protecting their time, their minds, their hearts. They're realizing that peace is more valuable than attention. That solitude is better than forced connection, and that not everyone deserves access to their energy. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. So now the question is for you. What do you think? Are men wrong for stepping back? Or are they simply evolving into something stronger, quieter, more self-aware? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters here. Let's talk about it. Without judgment, without bias, just raw truth. And if you're one of those men who's done chasing chaos and ready to choose peace, hit subscribe. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a space for clarity, reflection, and growth. A place for people who are ready to think deeper, move smarter, and live calmer. So hit that button, join the conversation, and remember, peace isn't found by accident, it's chosen. And from this point forward, that choice begins with you.